Well, hello again, also from my end, and a big thank you for taking the time this afternoon to join me in the Energy Transition Theater. Before I start, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, which is the land of the Gadigal people. And I pay my respect to their elders, past and present and emerging. As Heather said, my name is Grischa Sauerberg, and I'm the Vice President of Sectoral Decarbonization and Innovation at Shell. And as Heather said, this is the first session after lunch. So lots of people might feel a bit tired, maybe also because of jet lag, because they've come from a long way. Maybe because of a bit of hangover from Melbourne Cup yesterday. Yeah? But no matter what it is, we'll try to keep you awake, okay? So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about things that are all alarming, urgent, and exciting. As Heather said, the electrification and technologies for decarbonization. This is the theme of this afternoon. And I'll be focusing on one of the subsections of this, which is the topic of electrification. Oops, that was me. There we go. So let me take a step back, though, before we go into the topic of electrification, because lots of times I get the question, why is Shell actually so active in decarbonization? Aren't you an oil and gas company? Aren't you the fuels and lubricants guys? Yeah, and maybe that was true in the past, but lots of things have changed over the last years, because we have also set ourselves a goal to become a net zero emissions company by 2050. And that means we need to reduce, avoid, and mitigate emissions across scope 1, 2, and 3. And especially scope 3 is going to be the tricky one for us, because more than 90% of our emissions are related to scope 3. Pretty similar to many miners, actually. So how are we going about this? Well, first of all, we are working very closely with our customers to work with them on decarbonization solutions. And it's not about us pushing a product to them, it's about jointly developing and identifying what are the challenges we have to overcome to decarbonize. So it's really this partnership approach which is key. And the decarbonization solutions, they look very different across customers, across different industries and sectors. But if you look at if you look within a sector, then you see actually that the pathways to get to net zero are very, very similar. And that's why we have decided to actually take in a sectoral approach. So we've organized ourselves around the various sectors to drive decarbonization, sector by sector. Now, I lead the mining team, so we're trying to identify and bring to life decarbonization pathways with our customers, as I mentioned. But there's also other sectors that we serve in Shell, aviation, another hard-to-abate sector, marine, heavy-duty road transport, construction, agriculture, iron and steel, and many others. So we have quite a few number of expert sectoral teams, actually. The one thing in common across all these sectors, though, is that in order to achieve the decarbonization targets, it requires collaboration. That's what everyone is saying across all the sectors and what we're experiencing. But it's also this sense of urgency that we need to act now if we want to reach the decarbonization targets. We cannot start in 2048 if we want to reach the 2050 target. So what does all of this mean for mining? And you've seen these numbers probably multiple times. But if you look at mining, scope 1 and 2 makes up roughly 7% of the greenhouse gas emissions globally. And if you add the scope 3 emissions of mining, this easily rises to 28%. And that's a huge number. So how do we change this? And obviously, we always start with the customer, trying to listen and understand what the approach should be. And alongside with Deloitte, we did quite a few interviews across the mining industry to understand a bit better what are the key challenges, but also what are the actions. And the first thing that we understood is that mining companies set themselves a target as well to get to net zero. And you can see them on the slide here. They average between 30 and 50% CO2 reductions by 2030 and to get to net zero by 2050. And it's great. It's a great starting point to have a target. And those targets are admirable and ambitious. But more importantly, having these targets shows that mining companies realize the urgency of the situation and the decarbonization challenge that mining, but also the rest of the world, is facing. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Here's some quotes from mining companies which show that there's still quite a bit of ambiguity, actually, when it comes to how to achieve the net zero targets. The ambiguity comes from different levers, how you can get there. It's regarding supply and demand balances. It's regarding this classical chicken and egg situation with OEMs related to technology readiness. And whilst there are several themes and views, there's one common thread also across the mining companies. Everybody says, if we want to tackle this and tackle this successfully, it requires collaboration. And what we're also seeing is a tremendous bias for action. Because we need to start powering progress now if we want to reach the short and the longer term targets. But let me break down what action really means and where we can start today to overcome some of the challenges that I just mentioned. And these are learnings from mining customers, but also some learnings from other customers across other sectors that we serve. And it starts by placing decarbonization really at the heart of your strategy. At the beginning, and a few years ago, lots of times we saw that it's considered like a separate agenda. But we see a lot more success and a lot more traction and movement if you really embed it in the way you do business. Number two is to define a clear transitional pathway. So it's about balancing choices over time to break this holding pattern. With 2030 approaching, difficult trade-offs are needed. You can wait for the perfect solution, but you may wait long. So it's also about trialing and piloting things, because there's no silver bullet. If you were hoping to hear from me a silver bullet, I have to disappoint you. There is no silver bullet. There's no single answer to decarbonization. Fuel switching, energy efficiency, PPAs, you will need to tackle it from various angles. And no step change will happen overnight as well. So what are the steps that you can take now already? Even if it's small steps, it's the beginning and it starts making a difference. And the third one is around collaboration. And I've mentioned collaboration many times, and I cannot say it enough, but it's really about doubling down on collaboration, because this is how we will drive change as an industry. So it's widening the collaboration to ecosystem partners and coming together. And Heather and I just had a chat about this as well. This is super important. But let me make this a little bit more tangible. And try to bring a few items to the agenda also where Shell can help drive the decarbonization. And based on what we've heard from mining companies in terms of their key challenges, but also the opportunities to decarbonize, we've developed a wide range of solutions where Shell can help miners reach their net zero targets. In fact, we leverage Shell's businesses, but also our own mining expertise to provide decarbonization solutions across the entire mining value chain. And you can see on this slide the value chain of the mining business, and you can see that we've divided it into scope 1 and 2 and into scope 3. And let me start with scope 1 and 2 and go from left to right. And it starts with power. Power, this is about providing renewable energy for both the fleets, but also the industrial processing. And two of the biggest challenges of power production are emissions and cost. And that's why it comes quite handy that the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, estimates that renewable energy and electrification can actually deliver 75% of energy-related CO2 emissions reductions. 75%, that's a lot. And it can also help to achieve a 30% cost reduction by shifting to renewables. And we heard in sessions earlier today that we're really seeing that trend continuing that direction. So it's a lot about synchronizing supply and demand. And to help a bit on the supply side, Shell is actually, if you just look at, for instance, offshore wind generation, we're investing into 2.2 gigawatts of offshore capacity that we already have in operation or which is under construction, and another 9.2 gigawatts in the funnel of potential projects across North America, Europe, Asia, and hopefully soon also Australia. If I move a little bit further right, you see the mobility solutions. And this is about substituting diesel with lower carbon alternatives. And that's a huge lever. Because between 40 and 50%, and that depends a bit on the commodity that you mine, but between 40 and 50% of the industry's CO2 emissions come from diesel and mobile assets. Again, there's no silver bullet to fix it. And we believe it's going to be a mosaic of solutions that have to be tackled in order to address this. It's going to be a mosaic of biofuels, hydrogen, and electrification. And again, let me bring a few examples of what Shell can bring to the table here. If you look at biofuels, Shell is actually one of the largest biofuels traders and blenders in the world. It's also one of the largest producers, actually, of biofuels through our joint venture in Brazil, which offers advanced biofuels, renewable biogas, and second-generation biofuels as well. But we're also investing a lot in creating more capacity. So we've just started building a new biofuels plant in the Netherlands, and we have plans to build more across the world, also one in Singapore, a bit closer to here. Same with hydrogen, where Shell is developing hydrogen production and integrated hydrogen hubs. We've started this, and we want to make sure we want to be have a double-digit share, actually, of the market in hydrogen, of clean hydrogen sales. And electrification was the third one I mentioned, but I will touch on this in a little bit when I want to share the latest news with you. If we move further on the slide to the industrial processing, well, this can be electrified as well, but you can also offset the emissions, especially those where the technology may be not ready yet, so that you can already avoid or reduce it at this stage. And when you offset, you have two options. You can use nature-based solutions, which is a solution that we offer, which provides you with carbon credits. But there's another thing you can do, and that's something which we get a lot more traction with when we talk to miners, and that's carbon capture and storage, or carbon capture and utilization. And we've just signed a pilot agreement, actually, with one of the leading mining companies, which is aiming to reduce the carbon intensity of its operation by 33% by using a carbon capture pilot. So this is something that really gets a lot of traction. And again, while we wait for technology to be ready to be able to reduce and avoid it, this is a great interim solution you can do, which has a big, big lever. Let me move further to the right of the slide, where you can see the sources of the Scope 3 emissions, which is becoming more and more important for miners as well. And let's start with shipping. And like with mobile equipment, there's no silver bullet here as well. LNG, methanol, ammonia, yeah, we have to find out which ones will be the winner, or maybe there will be multiple winners. Maybe it's going to be a mosaic of solutions as well. But if you think about what you can do now already, LNG is something you can start doing now. And we're working with quite a few mining companies, actually, supplying them with LNG, because that is something you can do now, and that gives you 20 to 25% reduction of CO2. So it's a lever you have already at your hands. But also Shell helps to build consortia for decarbonization further down the value chain. Because we work closely with other sectors as well, like iron and steel, but also with our end customers, such as automotive OEMs. So we help build coalitions of the willing when it comes to developing an end-to-end green steel value chain, for instance, but also for other metals. And across the value chain, our approach remains the same, no matter where we tackle the decarbonization challenge. It always has to be customer-centric, collaborative. We want to work with like-minded partners, so there needs to be also a bias for action, and of course a close attention to safety. Let me move to electrification. And as I've touched upon earlier, I'm really excited to share with you the latest news about electrification. We've just launched it in the media a few weeks ago. You might have seen this, but let me tell you a bit more today. And electrification, as mentioned earlier, has a huge potential. And that's because if the electricity is green, it can really address 40 to 50% of a mine's emissions, because that's on average the emissions that are related to using diesel in the mobile equipment. But changes are easier said than done, and we know this from first-hand experience from the Charge On Challenge. which is a global initiative for those of you who haven't heard about this, founded by BHP, Rio Tinto, and Vale, and facilitated by Ostmine. And it develops concepts for large-scale haul truck electrification systems to help mining companies reduce consumption of diesel and cut emissions. And at the same time, it was a great case study, actually, how electrification can support mining decarbonization, but also what's possible when innovation meets collaboration. Well, we were super proud as Shell that we were named as one of the winners in this competition, but it does not mean that we have all the answers. There are still tremendous challenges to overcome. Oops, let me go back. There's still tremendous challenges to overcome, and those are related to technology, because the technology needs to operate in the harshest of conditions. They're related to infrastructure, because integrating charging solution is complex, and it must be resilient, it must be reliable, and it must be ultra fast. It's related to supply, because if you want an electrification solution, you need to make sure that you have enough energy and that it's renewable. And it's also about the site energy management, which plays a big role, because integration is key. And let me remind you, actually, that decarbonization is not a competition. It's about engagement, it's about facilitation, it's about co-creation, and it's about collaboration. And in that spirit, now this is the slide. In that spirit, we have announced the establishment of our 9-member consortium to integrate and develop an innovative electrification solution for mines haul truck. This consortium brings together some of the best-in-class solutions through different consortium members, and you see them on the screen here. And Shell's mining electrification solutions for off-road vehicles is an end-to-end, interoperable electrification pilot offering, and it aims to enable a decarbonized and cost-effective, that's equally important, electrification systems while minimizing operational impact. And the solution consists basically of 3 components, which you can see on the screen here. Number 1 is power provisioning and microgrids, which aims to provide a consistent and reliable supply of renewable power in a safe and a stable manner. It's about ultra-fast charging, which is the second component, which is, and now it comes, it's at an energy transfer of 400 kilowatt hours. You can charge in approximately or equal to 90 seconds. A 200-ton mine truck in 90 seconds, assuming a peak power delivery of 24 megawatts. So this is really a game changer when it comes to fast charging. The third component is in-vehicle storage. And we do this through a combination of advanced battery and capacitor technology that aims to deliver longer lifetimes than traditional batteries, because circularity is an increasing issue, and ultra-fast charging and strong performance. So what's in for the mining companies? This solution brings a range of benefits. First of all, it's end-to-end. It covers the full journey of the electron, from generation to drivetrain. It's interoperable, because you can use it across different OEM makes and models for greater flexibility. It's modular, so that operators can tailor solutions to specific needs. It also has a minimal operational impact, because you have multiple charge points to run continuously. It's cost competitive, aiming for lower total cost of ownership versus diesel-powered operations. And it reduces emissions without compromising on safety or efficiency. And the next step is now to deliver this integrated solution in the laboratory next year, in the field test then in 2024, and then we want to scale that up in 2025. So stay tuned on that. But if I'm sounding excited, that's because I am, and I've recently met actually a lot of the consortium partners again. And what really impressed me was the can-do mindset. Of course, the deep technical expertise that they have, but this can-do mindset and the excitement to make the impossible possible. Because this is the perfect example of collaboration. Because after all, no single company can achieve net zero alone. And in closing, let me just say the last years have been, and the next years will continue to be challenging. But they will also be rewarding, exciting, and valuable. And I think our electrification innovation exemplifies this dichotomy. It exemplifies the change that's taking place and the urgency to take action now. There's huge potential to be unearthed, as we say in the mining team, and it's up to us together to extract it. Thank you very much for listening, and come see us at IMARC. Me or my team, we will be around for the whole of IMARC if you have more questions on this. Thank you very much.